Hello, welcome back to Algebra. Here we're going to learn how to take a fraction and divide it by another fraction. And what you're going to find out is that now that you know how to multiply fractions together, dividing by fractions is actually really easy to do. So for instance, if you have the fraction 3/4 and you'd like to divide by 1/2, how would you go about doing that? Well, it turns out that every time you divide fractions, you just change it and turn it into multiplication. And you already know how to multiply fractions, so it becomes very easy. All you do is you take the first fraction that you have and write it again, 3/4, and this division sign here gets changed into multiplication, so put a dot there. And then the second fraction, the one that you're dividing by, you need to flip it upside down. And that's another way of saying you take the reciprocal of that fraction. We'll talk a little bit more about reciprocals later, but the 1/2 becomes 2 over 1. So do you see, all I've done is I've taken the division symbol, I've replaced it with multiplication, I've taken the second fraction, the one you're dividing by, and I flip it upside down. And then all of a sudden your division problem just simply becomes a multiplication problem. And we've done lots and lots of those. So in order to do this multiplication problem, 3 times 2 on the top becomes 6, and on the bottom you have 4 times 1, which is 4, and you ask yourself, can I simplify this fraction any further? Well, it's an improper fraction, so let's go ahead and convert it to a mixed number. 6 divided by 4 can only go one time, with a remainder of 2, because 6 minus 4 is 2, and then the bottom number, the denominator, just comes along for the ride and hangs out like that. And then I say, is this fully simplified? It's pretty close. The 2/4 can be divided top and bottom by 2 over 2, and that'll make it a little bit simpler. So you have 1 and 2 divided by 2 is 1, 4 divided by 2 is 2. So the answer is 1 1/2. Now, truthfully, this 6/4 way back here, that's also a valid answer. I mean, that's the answer to this division problem that we have here. But we always look for opportunities to simplify. So we change it to a mixed number, and then we go ahead and simplify that. Now, what if we had the problem 7/8 and we want to divide that by 1/4? How do we do that division? Well, the process is the same. The 7/8, the first fraction, stays the same. The division sign just changes into multiplication. And the second fraction, the 1/4, flip it upside down. Take the reciprocal of that, in other words. And then now you have a multiplication problem. So all of these division problems will change to multiplication. 7 times 4 on the top is 28, and on the bottom you have 8 times 1 is 8, and you ask yourself, is this simplified? Okay, you could circle this and say this is your answer, but let's try to simplify it more. How many times will 8 go into 28? 8 times 3 is 24, 8 times 4 is 32, that's too much. So 8 times 3 is 24, and the remainder, 28 minus 24, is 4, and the denominator, the 8 here, comes along for the ride as the new denominator. And then we can see right away we can simplify 4/8 further by dividing the top by 4 and the bottom by 4. And so you'll have 3 and 1/2, because 4 divided by 4 is 1, 8 divided by 4 is 2. So that's the fully simplified version. This answer is actually the answer to the problem. It's just not totally simplified. So however you want to write it, it's always better to try to simplify things as much as you can. Now what if you had 7/8? So we're using the same first fraction here, but now we're going to divide by 2/3. How do we do it? Same exact process. 7/8, the division sign changes to multiplication, and the second fraction gets flipped upside down. So we take the reciprocal of that, becoming 3/2. All right, and then on the top, 7 times 3 is 21, and on the bottom, 8 times 2 is 16, and you ask yourself, is this fully simplified? Is this fully simplified? Well, it's improper, so we can certainly change it to a mixed number. How many times will 16 go into 21? Only one time. The remainder there, the difference between 21 and 16 is 5, and 16 is the same denominator that'll come along for the ride. This is the final answer, because this 5/16 here, we really can't simplify any further. And we've talked quite a bit about simplifying fractions, so you should know what that's about at this point. All right, now what if we had the problem 9/10 divided by 2/5? How do we handle this? Same thing. 9/10 is the first guy. The division changes to multiplication, and then this 2/5, we just flip it upside down, becomes 5/2. And now we do the multiplication. On the top, the 9 times 5 is going to give you 45, and on the bottom, the 10 times 2 is going to give you 20. And then we say, are we done? Well, it's improper, so let's go ahead and see how many times will 20 go into 45. It's only going to go 2 times because that's going to be 40. So the remainder between 45 and 40 is only 5, and the denominator 20 comes along for the ride. And I can see right away I can simplify the 5/20ths by dividing the top by 5 and the bottom also by 5. And so what I'll have is 2 on the top will be 1 and then 4 because 20 divided by 5 is 4. That's the final answer, 2 and 1/4. We'll just do a couple of additional ones here. What if we had something a little different, 1.5, so we have a mixed number, divided by 1/4. How do you think you handle that? So this is a fraction just like any other fraction. It's just a mixed number, so you have a whole part and a fractional part. What do? Well, my recommendation is to take any mixed numbers you see, convert them to improper fractions. So what you have here is 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3, so this would be 3. The denominator, which is 2, just comes along for the ride. It doesn't get changed. And then this division sign changes to multiplication, and the 1/4 becomes 4/1. So all we did was we changed this into an improper fraction, then we did the same process here with the rest of the problem that we've always done. And now on the top, 3 times 4 is 12, and on the bottom, 2 times 1 is 2. And you ask yourself, is this fully simplified? Well, it's improper, but you can see 12 divided by 2 is a whole number. It's just 6. So the answer to this problem, if you actually took 1.5 and divided it by 1/4, it would go 6 even whole times. And that would be the answer to that problem. All right, the final one that we're going to do is a little bit similar. So we'll have 1 3/4, and we're going to divide that by 2 1/8. 2 1/8. So now we have a mixed number divided by a mixed number. Same process happens. Let's take it one step at a time. We'll convert this one first. 1 times 4 is 4, plus 3 is 7. So you have 7/4 because that denominator comes along for the ride. For now, keep the division symbol in place. Now we'll convert this guy. 2 times 8 is 16, plus 1 is 17. So 17 on the top. On the bottom we'll have the 8 because this denominator, 8, will come along for the ride. Now we have a division problem. So we'll change it to multiplication. 7/4, the division becomes multiplication, and we'll flip the other guy over 8/17. 8/17. So what do we have? On the top, 7 times 8 is 56. And on the bottom, we're going to have 4 times 17. Now if you get out a piece of paper and do that separately, you'll find that 4 times 17 is 68. So here you have a fraction, 56/68. Can you simplify it? Well, sure you can, because we know that at a minimum they're both divisible by 2. So off the top of my head I can't think of anything else that's going to divide properly into there, but I know that 2 will. What is 56 divided by 2? If you do that, you will find that the answer is 28. That's if you cut that in half, you'll get 28. And then 68 divided by 2 will be 34. And you look at this and you say, hey, can I simplify this further? And then you say, yes, you can, because, again, I can see that it's divisible by 2 again. So I divide by 2. And what am I going to get? 28 divided by 2 is going to be 14. And 34 divided by 2 is going to be 17. And I look at this and I say, hey, can I simplify that further? And there's nothing else that I can think of here. So when you have a problem, you get down to something like this, and you want to simplify it, the truth is there's lots of different things you could probably divide top and bottom in here to make this simpler. I just knew that I could do it by 2, so I did that, and then I looked again and said, oh, I can do it again. It turns out that you could also divide the top and bottom by 4, because you have a 2 here and a 2 here. 2 times 2 is 4. So truthfully, the top is divisible by 4, and the bottom is divisible by 4, but I didn't see that right away. So if you don't see that, don't worry about it. Just go by 2, and then go by 2 again. However you get to the end here does not matter, as long as you get to the correct answer. So that, in a nutshell, is how you simplify fractions, or how you divide fractions. You just simply change the division to multiplication, flip the second fraction over, and then do the multiplication as we've always been doing up to this point.